Thank you very much, Pete, and thank you all for having me here tonight. My name's Rob. I'm going to use a mouse for a lot of this stuff. I'm going to run through the geology or some recent geology updates at Tujuh Bukit fairly quickly, and then I'm going to run through some of what I believe is the best practice core processing. It's easily the best core shed that I've ever worked in. Here's a disclaimer, which just to summarise it, sort of means don't take anything that I'm saying too seriously. But let's just move on here. Tujuh Bukit is the very eastern end of Java, so Tujuh Bukit sits about here. So for your reference, this is Bali. It's about a 10-hour drive from Tujuh Bukit across the ferry down to the airport at Bali, or it's about a 1.5-hour drive to the nearest airport and then another hour and a half flight to Jakarta. So it's pretty easy to get to. The location is on this the Sunda Bandar Arc, where the Australasian plate is being pushed underneath the Indonesian plate. The key thing about this slide is this particular belt of rocks is hosting lots of famous mines. You can see Tujuh over here. I can't actually read those from here, but there's Elang and Tujuh over there. Tujuh is very similar to Tujuh Bukit, especially when you look at the core and the high sulfidation overprint. I'm just going to run through this slide pretty quickly. It sort of goes through our model. I'll just click through this stuff, but it shows how a porphyry system folds, and then the end of it sort of shows where our things at Tujuh Bukit sit. I like how this water table goes up and down a bit, but and then the erosion at the top, and eventually it shows where the prospects that I'm going to talk about today are. So Tujuh Bukit is sort of sitting in this kind of zone. We've got a couple of other new prospects that I'm going to talk about a little bit. Kuamachan, we thought it was like one of these fingery porphyries, but it's actually more like a smaller version of this. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. There's the standard subduction zone picture. I'll quickly run through the geological history of Tujuh Bukit. So, starts off with some sediments. So we've got the volcanic sedimentary host rocks. This is sort of an undersea thing, mostly turbidites and things like that. Then there's some tectonic activity which breaks it up a bit and makes it receptive to having other intrusions poke their way through. See, some of these beds are dipping, and if you do walk over to the area and walk over to Pulu Merah, which is the discovery outcrop, you can see these beds dipping towards the mine, just as you'd expect in this collapsing situation. There was some volcanism that occurred. The brown one is called BXG1, or the first major breccia unit, and this andesite here. This is our first unconformity. Then we have the money shot, or the intrusions, or the introduction of the minerals. So first was this precursor diorite. You can see the ages that these things have happened at, and that was intruded by the old and the young tonalite. And these two units are easily differentiated from each other, as the old tonalite's full of stockwork veining and was probably responsible for most of the metal emplacement. The younger tonalite has very few stockwork veins and it's not as mineralised. But the key thing is that the porphyry mineralisation is sort of sitting around that and in contact with all these rocks that you can see this hatched mineralisation, and it's also within that tonalite, which is not really shown too clearly in this picture. The next one is some post-porphyry mineralised intrusives that have come through. So we've got a hypoabyssal dacite which blows through the middle of the porphyry and blows the top of the porphyry away, which leaves what looks like a donut hole in the middle of our beautiful porphyry. And then some more units. This is BXG2, which is a diatreme breccia. It's got clasts of the tonalite in it, whereas BXG1 has no clasts of the tonalite. Otherwise, they look very similar, this orange rock and the brown rock. And this orange rock is quite porous and very receptive to the high sulfidation alteration that happened next. So by this time, we've changed from a more of a porphyry style mineralisation to a high sulfidation mineralisation. And a lot of the high sulfidation mineralisation is sort of deposited along the contact of this dome breccia within this BXG2. And there's another zone of which we refer to as the high sulfidation epithermal copper zone, which is a zone of enrichment and a bit of different geochemistry. So with the high sulfidation, it's changed what was originally chalcopyrite bornite mineralisation, which is what you'd expect in the porphyry, changed in this area where you can see the red high sulfidation. It's changed it to cavolite, chalcocite, and a bit of enargite. And there's a lot of enargite along this area here as well. Once upon a time, this whole section would have been mostly sulfidic material, as in not oxidised. It would have been full of pyrite, and then it was oxidised, and that's removed a lot of that. Here we are. There's erosional surface at its current level, and you can see these little brown bits at the top. That's the oxidised mineralisation that we're mining right now, and below that is the enargite high sulfidation epithermals. Okay, that's a bit of a summary. With that complicated geology, of course, we've got some complicated metallurgy. I'll cut through this pretty quickly, but this grey unit is our typical porphyry, which is dominated by covellite and chalcopyrite and bornite. Where it's been hit by the high sulfidation, advanced argillic alteration, a lot of that's been converted to covellite and chalcocite and a bit of enargite. This whole section is dominated by chalcocite and enargite, which is what I said before, the high sulfidation copper layer. And at the top, where this has been oxidised, this same material has been depleted in copper, and this is the stuff that we're mining right now. And there's a little bit of a transitional zone in the middle here. So that's a quick intro to the geology of Tujuh Bukit and the metallurgy. Now I'll go through some of the new discoveries. So dominantly, most of the host rocks are sitting in a volcanoclastic sedimentary situation with a few with some andesites. That's this dominant yellow stuff and some of these grey bits. And the porphyries have intruded along this northwest corridor. It's about 14 by 5 kilometres, and it's pretty prospective ground. If we look at the mag, if there's any geophysicists here, and where's Mr. Mackey tonight when I need him, you can see that where some of these porphyries are poked up, you've got some beautiful bullseye targets. Here's one at Geomachan. There's another one over here. This is a cracker up here. There's another one somewhere here. I can't really see the screen too well. Another classic one at Katak. And there would have been similar bullseye targets or bullseye magnetic signatures at Tujuh Bukit and at Chandrian and up here at Salakan, but they've been blown away by the high sulfidation overprint. So that's destroyed what would have destroyed those beautiful bullseye targets. These are great targets to drill. We had a visitor on site a while ago called Steve Garwin, and he was playing around with our multi-element geochemistry, which is what we're looking at a summary of here. And he worked out that if you looked at the copper zinc ratios for the data that had greater than 4 ppm moly, and you can see there's a lot more moly up in the northern end, he could make a connection between where we knew we had porphyries, like here at Chandrian and at Katak and at Lompongan. And he said, well, you've got some really interesting, easily recognisable anomalies with these mag highs and these pink balls. And he said, what about this one? And this was one of his favourites. We already had a hole designed. We had a few holes designed for this area, but we were just sort of umming and ahhing about the priority of drilling those holes. But when he said, look how these pink balls line up so nicely with that mag target, sure enough, we drilled a hole and it discovered Geomachan, which is the Indonesian word for tiger cave. So let's zoom in on some of these things. Tujuh Bukit sits here. At the top, as I said before, it's got the high sulfidation situation. We've drilled a lot of holes between 2022 and 2024, and we've increased the size of the 0.2 gold shell by about 75% in that time. You can see the current resource is 121 million tonnes at about 0.34 for 1.36. And I've got a piece of that right here. This is what that looks like. So we've got 121 million tonnes of this stuff, and it's going around about 0.3, 0.34. Our low-grade cutoff is 0.17, and that looks like this. So this is that the BXG2, which is a diatreme. This is what it looks like when it's fresh and unaltered, and then this is what it looks like when it's been cooked by the hot acidic sulfuric fumes, and it's full of pyrite and enargite and things like that. This is a little feeder channel. So this rock here is like these little brown bits that are moving up through here. And eventually you'll end up with the vuggy silica, which is in those rocks that are being passed around. So, yeah, so we've got a lot of this stuff. Sitting directly underneath those pits is the Tujuh Bukit porphyry. And the current resource estimate is 1.7 billion tonnes at 0.5 and 0.5 for 8.2 million tonnes of copper and about 28 million ounces of gold. The scale on this is it's about 1 kilometre between here and here. And you can see there's some conceptual mining designs where we've got a sub-level cave up in this really high-grade bit at the top and a couple of panel caves below that. What else there? Oh, I'll talk about that a bit later. Here's some of the hot hits. Before I was mentioning about the hole that was blown in the middle by those polybyssal intrusives. You can see this is the high-grade ring. We're sort of looking down at an angle from the top there. And you can see this section here has got a bit of low grade. That's where those post-porphyry intrusives have come through. And this little bit around here is a really super high-grade bit. That's where the SLC is going to start. You can see this hole was drilled from the decline. It's the third hole. One thing that's really cool about Merdeka or Tujuh Bukit is we name all the holes with the year that they were drilled, so it makes it very easy to work out the old holes from the new holes. So this hole was drilled in 2019, this hole was drilled in 2023, and this one that I'm talking about, number 3, is this one here. What's that, 360 odd metres at 1.3 and 1.3. That's a pretty nice hit. In this same belt was one of the discovery holes. This was drilled in 2011. That's this one down here. It's got, what, 689, is it, at 1% copper and 0.85. So they're pretty impressive hits, is what you'd expect from something that's of this calibre. This little bit at the top is one of the oxide pits. That's pit A. Okay, moving along to Geomachan. This is the one that we recently discovered a couple of years ago. It's about 3.5 k's northwest of Tujuh Bukit. We've got 6 drills drilling out there right now, and we're working our way to the maiden resource estimate, which is going to be released in at Q4 this year. I really can't quite read these numbers, but I think that's 400 metres at 0.5 and 0.3. So it's got some nice hits there. This is a new discovery. Looking forward to seeing that, the maiden resource estimate. Next one is Chandrian. It's about 2 k's to the east of Tujuh Bukit. We do have a resource estimate on this. It's about 43 million tonnes at 0.2 copper and 0.35 gold. That works out to be about 80,000 tonnes of copper and just under 500,000 ounces of gold. The vertical scale on this is 500 metres. It's open at depth. When we did most of the drilling on this, and the same for, I'll just come back to Geomachan, that's also 500 metres. Our focus at this time is to try and find near-surface mineralisation to supplement the underground project. So we're looking for near-surface stuff, open pittable stuff. So that's why we've got these things that are open at depth, and we're yet to do the follow-up drilling. Although we are doing, and we have just done some nice IP, which is helping us target some similar things. Next one is one called Katak, again in a beautiful little bullseye there. That's about 2.5 k's northwest of Tujuh Bukit. It's got 2 distinct lobes of mineralisation. We haven't done a mineral resource estimate on this, or we haven't released a mineral resource estimate on this, but it's another nice little part of the portfolio. Tujuh Bukit North is a new one. It's 500 metres from the pit, so that's very close. It's only got a few holes in it. We were drilling one of those little mag highs that I was talking about before with a geotech hole, and we convinced the geotechs to move it onto the mag high, and it was supposed to go to 60 metres, but we recognised that we were in a porphyry and we pushed it to about 160. Thank goodness the geotechs let us do that. And then we followed up with some other holes, and the first one was a pretty nice hit with, I wish I could see this, 250 metres at 0.3 from near surface. So this does come very close to surface. And what's next? Tujuh Bukit South, the southern porphyry. So this is hanging off the southern end. So this is the main part of Tujuh Bukit that I've talked about before. It's only showing the drill holes that are into this little section. This will be accessible by the underground infrastructure, and I've put this slide in to show where that sits in relation to the main part of Tujuh Bukit. So it's pretty fertile ground. I suspect that when we do get into sinking our teeth into these 2 other areas, we'll find similar things. This is Lompongan and Salakan. Interestingly, with our IP that we've just done at Geomachan, we've done a nice IP survey with pole dipole, which can see relatively deep. over this area, and it's found a nice chargeable zone right around the edge of this mag high. And in Lompongan, where we haven't really drilled, we've drilled one little hole over this way, but in the area that we haven't drilled, we've got another fantastic chargeable high hanging off the edge of this beautiful bullseye target, and it's got all that Steve Gowan geochemistry around it. It's a pretty exciting target that we will drill soon. There are a couple of holes into these things already. Intrepid drilled this one in 2012, and that says 488 metres at 0.2. That's a pretty nice hit to be sitting out there with no follow-up drilling on it. This is the one I mentioned before that was drilled into part of Lompongan, and I can't remember at all. 226 metres at 0.13. So they're sort of snifters around the edge of the main thing that we're looking at. And that's my brief update on the geology. Now let's get on to the core shed, which I know is what everyone is really here for. The core processing facility is sitting in sits about here. We just built a new assay lab. The assay lab is just in the process of being commissioned. It's got 2 fire assay furnaces. It can do, we've got ICP, OES and MS. We've got 2 of each of those machines. And we've got the LECO sulfur and carbon. And we're only just finishing off the commissioning of it. The cool thing about the core shed is it's got all these infrastructure in it. Like it's got the geology office, the core cutting room and sample preparation all under the one roof. We can display over 1,000 trays of core, and we have about 25 geologists and about 40 support people. We did support up to 20 diamond rigs with this processing facility. So here's the layout. It's about 66 metres by 30 metres. Essentially, the core gets delivered here. Gets cleaned up here, then we do the core photography here. We do some preliminary work on the core, and then we put it in the drying ovens to dry it out. Then we do whole tray SG, then we do ASD, and we push it back out here, and we do all this logging, and then it gets pushed into this soundproof room, which is the core cutting room, where it's got little portholes to slip the core straight through. The whole place is on roller racks, and then it comes back out and gets sampled and checked for the sample quality. And then the samples end up on pallets over here, and they get wheeled out on a little trolley thing, goes into this section. And this is the chain of custody. You can see these little pink things there, little swipe access on the doors. So we've got Intertech as our lab, and we have a prep facility built into the core shed. So we've got LM2s and board crushers and everything. So we can keep a really good grip on the QA/QC here. And of course, the geology office is in the core shed. So you can see when the new core rolls up, I can see it from my desk and I go, oh, this new core, and get the guys and we go and have a look. It's pretty cool. Here's the workflow. People often ask me about this. I'll just zoom in on one of my favourite parts. Well, can I? Yes, I can. So all the logging stuff, we'll look at that in a minute, but we do each batch submission is 35 samples with 2 standards, 2 coarse duplicates from the Boyd split, which is 2 millimetre crush, and 1 coarse blank. So we make sure that our submissions match what can be fired in a single fire at the assay lab. The next really cool thing, if I can do this, is after the Boyd crusher, we get 1.5 split. We put that through the LM2s to 75 microns. And then every 20th sample, we take an extra pulp. So these are 150 grams. One is for external checks. So, and with those exact same pulps, we do the external checks, we do the blind resubmissions, and then we keep a reference set, which is also pretty handy. This presentation will be available for people to look at later, but this is the analysis suite that we do for all our different types of sampling. Okay, now I'm going to show the core processing video, if I can.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Tujuh Bukit Core Processing Facility. This video covers all core processing activities. Before starting work, we always calibrate our equipment to ensure high standards and good quality before conducting measurements. The following is the calibration activity of the IQ logger by moving the device in an 8 pattern on a flat surface and air, as well as testing the discontinuity surface in 4 different directions on a standardized calibration medium. Now, let's move on to the magnetic susceptibility calibration. This ensures that the results of the magnetic susceptibility calibration are in accordance with the certified calibration block. For equitip calibration, ensure the calibration block is placed on a stable floor surface and verify the calibration results are consistent with the certified calibration block. We also perform caliper calibration, whole tray density scale calibration, XRF calibration by analyzing a plate, and ASD calibration using several minerals found in Tujuh Bukit. Here is the core processing workflow. Next, let's start the core processing tour. Start from the core receiving area. Includes the receipt and check of the cores to ensure the standards and quality, as well as the core washing activities. Ensure the core tray, rulers, and RGB plate are placed properly. The cleaned cores are photographed using a Canon EOS R5 camera with a Canon lens RF 24 to 105 mm f4 IS USM lens. The standard for core tray photo should include a measurement and an RGB plates, crop based on the core tray size, and input the hole identity. The cores that have been photographed are placed on the roller rack for next measurement. A rebound hardness test measures the core's hardness, conducted 13 times within 1 meter. And then structure logging is carried out by marking and recording the depth, thickness and infill minerals of the structure on the core. XRF measurement of the core surface is conducted by a qualified operator wearing a TLD. The logged cores are then dried in an oven. The oven drying process is recorded on the provided form, including the date, time, and temperature. Standard core drying is performed at 60 degrees Celsius for approximately 6 hours, or until the sample is dry. After drying the core, it is removed from the oven. The removal is documented on the form, including the date and time. Then, the core is placed on the roller rack for the next measurement process. Whole tray density measurement includes weigh the core on a tray and capture the results as an archive. The core diameter is measured using a digital caliper. One of the operator input the results of the whole tray density measurement. ASD measurement is performed once every 1 meter of core depth. Using the IQ logger, measurements are conducted at previously marked depths to obtain the structural orientation value by aligning the instrument's beam with the structure. Magnetic susceptibility and conductivity measurements are performed 5 times every 2 meters of core depth. Geologists log lithology, alteration, mineralization, oxidation, weathering, and fault and vein density. The geotechnical logger determines the sample size with a length-to-diameter ratio of 2.5 to 1, to obtain information on the rock strength and failure type using a geological hammer impact. Now, let's move on the Archimedean density. Remove the sample from the oven after drying at 60 degrees Celsius. After that, capture images of the Archimedean density sample. Measure the length and the diameter of the sample using a digital caliper. And make sure the measurement result inputted into the database. Weigh the sample on scale. Then, coat the sample with paraffin. Weigh the sample coated with paraffin on the scale. Weigh the paraffin-coated sample in water. Let's on-point load test steps. Diametral PLT samples are collected every 3-meter intervals and axial PLT every 5 meters. Start from capture images of the point load test sample. Next to rebound hardness test using Equotip in 5 points around the sample. The hardness measurement during PLT is conducted for comparison between hardness and strength. Measure the length and diameter using a digital caliper and record the result. Place the sample at the center of the sample diameter and press the hydraulic until the sample breaks. Input gauge load value into the database. Ticketing process is carried out as a marker for the sampling intervals determined by the geologist. The ticket is placed on the tray according to the sampling interval list. Mark the core cutting line approximately 2 centimeters from the orientation line. The core cutting line is marked using a blue pen to preserve the orientation line for future validation. Conduct a pre-start check of the tools before core cutting to ensure the tools in good condition. The core is cut in soundproof core cutting room. Cut the core along the core cutting line that has been previously marked. The sampling process is done based on the interval boundaries marked by the tickets, and the sample is then placed in a calico bag. While the sample check includes verifying the alignment of the ticket interval and the sample ticket code on the bag by the geologist. The samples ready in one dispatch can be sent to the preparation laboratory, and the geologist provides the submission form. The samples being sent in one dispatch are 38 routine samples and QA/QC samples, including 2 certified reference materials, CRM, 2 course duplicates, and 1 course blank. The samples are weighed while wet using an automatic scale. The data is captured automatically during weighing, and placing the samples into the trolley for the drying process. Drying the sample at 60 degrees Celsius for diamond core, and 105 degrees Celsius for reverse circulation samples. Removing the sample from the oven after for about 12 hours or until the sample is dry. The sample is weighed again when it's dry. Sample preparation for crushing. The next step is to crush the sample to a size of 6 mm using a jaw crusher. It's 6 mm sample size. After that, the sample from the jaw crusher is further ground to a size of 2 mm and then split using a Boyd crusher. It's 2 mm size samples. Provide a barcode label on the pulp sample envelope. The sample that has been ground and split from the Boyd crusher is then further ground using a pulverizer until the sample reaches a size of 75 micrometer. It's 75 micrometer size samples. Crushing process from jaw crusher to pulverize. A sieving test is carried out every 15th sample to monitor the fineness of the sample with a passing requirement of 95%. Measurement of sample weight less than 75 and greater than 75 micrometer results from the sample sieving process and directly calculated with 95% passing terms. The sample is packed according to the sample code with a weight of approximately 250 grams to be sent for analysis. Packing process is in accordance with the dispatch on the submission form. Before the sample is sent, the delivery code and the completeness of the sample are checked. The coarse and pulp residue samples from each interval are stored for future analytics and metallurgical test work. The sample is vacuumed with nitrogen to maintain the quality of the sample. Vacuumed sample results. Store the vacuumed sample into container. Downhole survey calibration is conducted regularly every week, on holes with predetermined azimuth and dip, to ensure the accuracy. Data from all core processing is stored in the database. Geologists conduct through all the core processing data. Thank you very much for watching. We are truly honored by your time and attention. Have a great day.
That's a pretty good core processing shed, isn't it? How's that for a core shed? That's pretty much the end of my talk. Any questions? Yes, Rod?
Before the core's cut.
Yes, yes.
But you never see them.
Yes, yes, you saw the girls. There were two girls logging the core before the core was cut.
I really wouldn't want to. It's too difficult. The cut core is so much better.
You know, no, we do. We log before it gets cut. Yep, yep, absolutely. Simon.
Thanks, Rod. Lots to be impressed about there. I thought probably the most impressive thing was how clean those people's shirts were.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really clean. A couple of questions. One, geologically, the vertical extent of the porphyry mineralisation that you've got, what would be the sort of greatest vertical extent that you see?
Well, all the porphyries that we've identified are still open at depth. The greatest one is at Tujuh Bukit, and that's over 1 kilometre.
Okay, that's pretty cool. You're obviously collecting a huge amount of data there. How are you using it? For example, with the hardness data,
Yeah.
do you create like a 3D model of that?
Yeah. So the hardness data, the equitip data, we've combined that with we've got 150 kilometres of core scan data, and we combined the hardness, the equitip data with the core scan data and used machine learning to work out our alteration facies. We went from 4 or 5 pretty dumb alteration facies, which was where people were guessing what the alteration was, to some really quantitatively prepared, trusting the numbers from core scan and equitip to come up with 8 really solid domains. And we used machine learning to do that. And then we back calculated those alteration facies into the geochemical database. And then we used machine learning to extrapolate that into areas that we didn't have core scan to create a much broader alteration model.
That's great to hear, because collecting data is wonderful, but if you don't use it.
Yeah, no, the QAQC data also is rigorously checked, and I've got 4 or 5 QAQC geologists, and they focus on if there's any drift or any problems with that stuff. And we can track it back through all those photographs and things that everyone's taking all the way.
I know that I'm supposed to ask you a Dorothy Dix, but I couldn't remember what you actually asked me to ask you. So I'm going to ignore that one. I've got another question. Fantastic presentation. There will be a few of us in the room that have audited in-house sample prep and assay facilities on many mines and found them to be absolutely disastrous. The systems you've put in place, there's lots of bells and whistles what you've got there, Rob, which is great. But fundamentally, you've got the standard operating procedures, you've got the process, but it all depends on people following it and having management support. So when I come and audit you in 5 years' time after the current crop have all left and the management has decided not to continue the process, why am I going to find it still being in good condition instead of being a shithole? Yeah,
so that's a great question, and thanks for that one, Mark. We quite regularly get some external guys to put on the white gloves and check things out. Dominic Francois Bongasson has been on site about 4 or 5 times, and he's helped with the design of the prep facility. When you were saying before about in-house labs, this is not an in-house lab. This is owned by us. Yeah, sample prep is Intertek, and the assay lab is also Intertek. So we've bought all the stuff, and they run it. And I can't get into these doors. These are all Intertek doors, so it's a separate entity. As far as keeping the checks, we also get Ian Lipton. Sometimes he's nicknamed Teabag. I don't know why they call him that, but he comes to site every few years or every year or so, and he runs through this place with the white glove and makes sure that we're not doing anything crazy. He's the guy that introduced the equitip to us and made sure that we used the calibration thingo, and the same with the mag sus. I'd never used a calibration thing on a mag sus before, and he said, "You guys have got to calibrate your mag sus." And we found that we had one machine that was completely off chops, and so we re-mag sus a whole heap of core. So as long as we keep getting our external consultants in to keep us in line, I believe that it will maintain the fantastic status that it currently is.
Rob, I see a lot of fingers still on keyboards putting data in.
Yeah.
As opposed to pulling it straight through from the machines, which, I was sort of thinking about potential opportunities there for fat fingers and keys being sort of pushed. Are you doing any double data entry and doing some QA/QC on that just to check occasionally?
Look, we do get, sometimes you do see data entry errors. There's no question about that. We don't do double data entry. No, that's a good point though. We should, next time someone audits us, they should look for that. Yes, Bob.
You've got an extraordinary amount of data.
Yeah.
So processing, making sense of it, it's going to be a big job.
Mm.
Can you see a future in AI for actually doing a lot of this stuff?
Absolutely. I think there's two sort of ways you can think about this stuff. One's machine learning, and yes, we do use machine learning in a lot of things. AI is our next thing, and Medeka has purchased an AI system. I don't know too much about it, but I know that once we put all of our data into that, we'll be able to type in questions like and we're going to put in our drilling operational data, because we capture all of the stuff on the drill plods, like the muds that gets used in the driller operator and the stuck rods and all those kind of things, and the lithologies, and we'll also have the assays and the equitip data. So we'll be able to have a massive database. We can say to AI computer, what is the best formula for the muds that we should be used for drilling in this particular rock? And it'll give us a proper answer, a sensible answer, hopefully. Yeah. Yes, AI and machine learning are definitely used. We use them right now to look at a lot of this data. My team has won 2 awards. The company has excellence awards, and we've won 2 so far for our machine learning stuff.
That's a very expensive process.
Yep.
Where did it start in the process of develop? They must be fairly certain it's going to be a mine.
Oh, yeah.
So this is post-feasibility study work?
This is in pre-feasibility, before the pre-feasibility. So this core shed it cost about $1 million. It was built in 2018, which is around about the same time as the underground decline started. The purpose of the core shed was to process all the underground core.
That underground decline was an exploration?
Exploration decline.
So and I work with some clients who are very careful with their cash, and they would never have that until after a definitive feasibility study. Yep. So I'm impressed beyond belief.
Yeah, the company's been spectacular at supporting brilliant exploration and brilliant best practice stuff. So a lot of that was from Col Moorhead, who was the CEO when this stuff kicked off. Travis.
Thanks, Rob. 2 questions. One, you dry the trace, but then later on you dried your sample bags to work out moisture content. So moisture content
that it's picked up. Yep.
That's the life in the core shed itself, not in situ.
Correct. So we do hose that core down when we're logging it. So if there's going to be any water going into it, yes, it will. But you are right. It is not a true moisture content thing. And I won't make up a number. Yeah, so we've got downhole orientation tools, and it is all done at the rig. And we do the same. Everyone takes a photograph of every single core orientation measurement that gets done, and it all gets recorded. Yep.
Do you have rig geologists doing it?
We have a rig geotech, so geotechnician, I should say. Yes. So we have one of our guys sitting there with each rig. Awesome. So we've got 6 rigs at Gilmartin and 2 diamond rigs on doing the life of mine stuff around the pits.
Thanks for the talk, Rob. It's pretty impressive. I've got 2 questions. The first one is, how do you keep the people doing the equitip sane? Because it's not a good job.
Yeah. We've got a pretty big team of people in the core shed. They take it in turns. They just do it. So when the core turns up, they process most of that stuff within a couple of hours. Most of the painful stuff is done really quickly. And then they can sit down and do other things. But, yep, I don't know.
The second question is more serious. There's a lot of data collected the way through before the geo is evolved. Do you have any, we'll call it ML, whatever you want to call it, data analytics to assist the geos with the logging from the data that's being collected before they see the pool?
Great question. And we don't do that yet. And I know there are packages that do help geologists do that, even from the core photography side of things. No, we don't. We do look at the XRF though straight away. So we've got XRF that gets measured as soon as the core hits the deck, and we use that tool mostly to help us work out how things are going towards the designed end of hole depth. And if we can still pick up more than say 0.2% copper, we'll probably keep drilling that hole unless we're going, way beyond the target depth. Like if the target depth is like 500 metres and we get to the 700 metre mark, and we sort of say, maybe we should stop now.
Any other questions? There's one. This one here.
Tony.
Just a very quick one. Where did the ASD fit in? Was that before core logging?
Yes,
yeah.
It is.
It's certainly.
It could, yeah. Mostly related to the alteration. But yes, absolutely. The ASD is done before the logging.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yep.
Up here.
I was just going to ask, that much data, what systems do you use? Are they integrated because they are time-based data, application-based data?
Excellent question. What's the micromine one called? GeoBank. We use GeoBank. However, we've got a lot of guys who are complete propeller heads in the team, and they've written a lot of native SQL that sits outside of the ADM. So it's GeoBank plus. And we're probably not allowed to say that.
Separate.
The imagery is just sitting as image, like the core imagery. Core photos is as a separate database. It's just image files in a separate database. It's not in the SQL.
Folder.
Yes, and we have got a system which is a little bit like Imago that we built in house using some help from ChatGPT, and it can look at the colours of the core trays, and it excludes any bits that's not core. It works out what is core and what's not core, and it does the colours like the hex colours or whatever, and that is in the database.
Simon? Couple round question again. One a geology one. The Tujuh Bukit porphyry, is it a porphyry or a nested?
Oh, great question, Simon. So there are definitely a couple of porphyries in there. So the first one, which is the one that's had the guts blown out of the middle of it, is like that, and the next one is like that. And you can clearly see these two porphyries when you look at the zonation of the multi-elements around them. So on the inside of the porphyry, you've got a zone of a really hard zone of silica just at the top of the porphyry, and this one has had that blown out like that. And that's a better way to do it. And this one hasn't. So if you look at the metal zonation, you've got that zone of silica, and then just on the outside of that, you've got a zone of gold. Just on the outside of that, you've got copper, moly, and then cobalt. And you can clearly see these halos extending outward in that typical porphyry context. So yes, using that, you can see that there are at least two in the main Tujuh Bukit porphyry.
Second, so I think clearly you have a good core shed. You're collecting state-of-the-art information, and I think as one of the other questions alluded to, how this stuff feeds into the logging process. What I'm going to ask is, how far are you from being able to create a geology log without a geologist logging?
Yeah.
Having the geologist perhaps just do a check.
Yeah, great question. So once we've got our mobile geochemistry, then we can sort of do a little bit of that. In fact, we use that and machine learning to help validate our logging. So we look at the mobile elements, and I think there's 6 or 7 of them, and then we code that with the litho that's been logged, and you can see if things are in the wrong spot based on those machine learning clusters like that. So yes, we can, but no, we don't, because it takes a bit of time to get that multi-element geochemistry back. It's a bit of a timing thing as well, because we want to drill the next hole and we don't want to be mucking around waiting for the litho. The geos are pretty good geos. And in fact, Indonesia's got some of the best geos that I've ever worked with. And I'm sure anyone here who's worked in Indonesia will agree that the geos are technically brilliant. And they're very good at picking rock types, and the logging's good. I trust the logging. So why would we not do that?
Robert, here you've got a story to tell about pink circles.
Oh, yes. That was Mark's question. Thank you, Mark. So I've just put that in as an appendix. So sometimes people wondered how we got those pink balls from Steve Garwin, and I've put the formulas that we use in Leapfrog. So the outer calculated field to your assay file, where the copper per zinc is copper divided by zinc. So this is what you would put into Leapfrog's calculated field, and this is how you then get your moly, and you put a 4 ppm filter on it. You put a radius like that, and you use that value there, and then you can get those pink ball clusters. That's a pretty cool thing to do, and I'm really impressed with how Steve Garwin pulled that together. And I've got one more appendix, and that's this. So these are the core shed video that we've just watched. If it doesn't come through very clearly on the AIG YouTube, that drive has these versions of this. There's English, Chinese, and Indonesian versions of that core process for anyone who clicks that link.
Collecting all that data, Rob, is absolutely awesome. And I'm assuming that you're doing lots of cross-checks. How many stuff-ups do you find when you do the cross-checks, especially as Jared was talking about fat fingers, but even data being attributed to the wrong sample or the wrong length. And I was impressed when you use the geochem to cross-check your logging, but I'm just interested in the other cross-checks you do.
Great question. Yeah, look, I'm sure there are a few slip-ups that happen like that. And the best way, well, an easy way to see those things is to plot that data in 3D and see if you've got anything really funky turning up, like a big gap of missing data. Like, I look at all the data probably once a month. I just look at all of the new data that's appeared, and you can see, oh yeah, the data's coming down and suddenly there's a gap, or it's on a hole over here, and you think, oh, what's going on with that? We don't have a regimented system for that, but we do have a team of QA/QC people that do those kind of things. But yeah, great question. I don't think that's a good answer, but yes.
I think I would have liked to stop the pink balls in the perfect spot, but I've gone on beyond that. I'd like to ask everyone to thank Rob for an excellent talk.